Day 11.
Hi, everybody. It's day 11. It's April 6th. And our guest, as you can see, is Lucy Calkins, who has been I used to call you a paperback mentor. Now you're an actual physical mentor who I can visit when I'm in New York City and have conversations with you. Lucy is the founding director of the Teachers Reading and Writing Project at Columbia, the founding director of that project for more than 30 years. A prolific reader, writer, teacher, mentor. And I can't say we are just so thrilled to have you with us.
Well, I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you.
Pleased you're doing this and getting big ideas and people's voices out into the world. It's a beautiful thing to do.
Oh, we're thrilled that you could join us today. And as we mentioned before we came on, I don't think we've ever met face to face. So this is a real treat for me today.
Yeah.
Well, you know, way back, I've told you this story, Lucy, but I was a second-year teacher, and the woman down the hall who knew what I was trying, and I was making lots of mistakes with my fifth graders, walked down the hall and said, "I think you want to read this." And it had just such a profound impact on me. I have bought this book for more people in my life than any other professional development book I've ever bought. It is a concise and clear path through a year in the writing of one little girl, Susie, and all of the decisions she's making as a writer. But I was so struck because, of course, I'm back rereading it, preparing to talk to you. By this thought you had, I began to see teaching as a way to make meaning in my own life while helping others to do the same. What a beautiful way to approach teaching. So lessons from a child, so powerful. But then when you published Living Between the Lines, I sat in this corner in a chair with this book on my lap, and I would read 10 pages and write and write and write and 10 more. And it was this profound change when you said that the writing notebook had made you rethink writing workshop. And here I was trying to teach in a writing workshop, and now I was learning what it meant to really do that work in my own notebook. So I'm just grateful in all ways for what you've given me to think about as a teacher.
Well, it's interesting for you to go back all those years, right, to when I was a young teacher.
Yeah. Brilliant thinker, always. So one of the things that you talk about in your early years of learning teaching was your relationship with Donald Murray. Can you talk about that?
Yes, but I think I should just back up and say a little about Don Graves first.
Okay.
Just because the two are kind of so connected. I think some people have heard these stories and some haven't, but I grew up in Western New York, and I have 8 brothers and sisters. And my mother noticed when my youngest brother was 8 that he was left-handed. That's how attentive she was to each of us. That is, you have 9 kids, and she was a doctor. And so she wasn't hovering. And I was sort of yearning to find significance in my life. And there was a man at the church who was director of Christian education, and that was Don Graves. And I became pretty involved with the church, and through the church with tutoring in Lackawanna, which is the steel plant area around the steel plant of Buffalo. It's no longer, the steel plants have been closed down. But Don and I would go in every Monday night, and we would both be tutoring kids there, along with a bunch of other high school kids. And I think that's how Don got involved in the field of education, because he was so struck by the power of that work. He began to do his doctorate at the University of Buffalo. And I was their main babysitter for the Graves' family. And every Saturday I would be there with their family. And so it wasn't a surprise that I majored in religion, and then really didn't have the kind of religious faith that would have me have that be my career. So sort of no surprise, went into the field of education. And after about 4 years or so of teaching, Don Graves had meanwhile gotten a position at the University of New Hampshire, where Don Murray was teaching writing. So the Don Graves, who's interested in young children, and Don Murray, who's interested in teaching, adults who care a lot about writing, how to write, and freshman college courses, those two people were there together. And Don got the first big grant. Don Graves got the first big grant to study young children as writers. So I headed off to be the research colleague on that project. And that's where I began to work with Murray. I'm wondering if this is true. No, I'm trying to get my time straight. No, actually, I started with Murray before that. When I was teaching for those 4 or 5 years, I read A Writer Teaches Writing. And I remember being on this Long Island Sound, looking out at the ocean after reading that book, and that the way the sun can kind of come make a path right to you. I remember a moment of reading that book and feeling like this is my path in life. Wow. I was so inspired by the way he described writing as a calling, as a way to find meaning in the everydayness of your life. So I began teaching writing differently because of Murray. I was teaching 3rd and 4th graders at the time. Then Don got that grant, and I left teaching to join Don and Don. And was really studying with Murray the whole time when we were there in New Hampshire. The first project that I did with Don Murray, after I had read that book, I wrote to him and I said, I was so struck by it. I would really like to meet with him. And I met with him for a writing conference, and a week later, his daughter died. And he suggested that I come up and spend the summer in New Hampshire, and that he would work with me once a week. And I felt that he was taking me on as a daughter.
Wow.
And it was interesting because years later, when Don Murray died, and his service was in the field house, you remember it.
Yeah, I do.
There's hordes of people. Mm-hmm. And so I was standing in line with someone waiting to get in. And I said, "How do you know Don Murray?" And the person said, "He adopted me as kind of a daughter and taught me to write." And I thought, no, he adopted me as kind of a daughter. And Penny, I'm sure you felt.
I did. I was going to say, wait, I said that. Yeah.
So yeah, my relationship with him was quite something. After that summer, when I worked with him met with him maybe 6 times across the summer for 15 minutes. I mean, it wasn't really that much, but it kept me working all summer. After that, I went back to teaching, and I would drive up to New Hampshire, a 3-hour drive for a 15-minute conference with him, and then back for, another 3-hour drive. So yes, both Murray and Graves were very influential in my life. And I think about that now because I think it's on us to be equally generous to the young people in the field, because that's sort of, it's a way to give back, I guess.
Oh, I love that. And I think that what you're doing right now is that, because we have a lot of young teachers who watch these to learn how people came to be leaders like you are.
Yeah, well, I have these wonderful students, and I talk to them about, how important it is to just move mountains so as to learn as much as you can. Mm-hmm. Driving 3.5 hours for a 15-minute conference was the best possible use of my time I could ever,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Of course, now we just have to Zoom. We don't have to.
That's true. Well, I have to say, I did arrive a day early for my thing in New York so I could spend time with you. And it's the exact same feeling. Like, I have this opportunity. I sat in on your classes, and listen to the stuff you were doing with your master's students. You know, you are a real light for their learning. Wow. It's exciting. So one of the things that I was really interested in, you had your first experience teaching in high school. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Talk to us about that. We're both like, we spent many years in high school. What was it like for you to teach in a high school?
I was terrible. I had no idea what I was doing. I was in the alternate learning center for kids who had struggled. And, you know, they were sort of put in this basement room all day, and I was to be their teacher. And oh my God, I had just no idea how to do, you know, I did not know what I was doing. And I have memories of, I just tried to bribe them to stay engaged. You know, I would take them, put them in my car and drive them out to beautiful mountainous places, and we'd go hiking. And we cooked. We would make omelets. I brought in a little frying pan, electric frying pan, and I would sort of, you know, think there's a little, read the recipe, and then we'll make these delicious, whatever the food was, and anything to get them engaged. And I was just desperate and really did not know what I was doing. And it was hard to fail at teaching. I mean, I didn't totally fail. I really loved the kids, and I would, you know, I remember every one of them to this day in a way that you do remember your first year of teaching. But I knew I didn't know what I was doing. So after, I don't know if it was 1 or 2 years, this was Weaver High School in the north end of Hartford. After a year or two of that, I went to Don Graves and said, I am just such a failure at this. How do I learn to teach? And that's when I went off to the British primary schools. So I flew to Oxford, I flew to Heathrow and hitchhiked to Oxfordshire, and waited for a week outside the office of John Coe until I could get him to set me up as an apprentice teacher for the year. And I just basically was like a sort of like a student teacher in these incredible, incredible schools in England. So that's where that and the teaching of writing kind of came together to you know, make something.
I think we all have that qualms about looking back at that first couple of years. I think there's a comfort in a way, Lucy, when people hear you say that, like, it was really a struggle, right? Because I think today, given the pandemic and things, teachers, it's really, really hard to be a teacher right now.
You know, I remember I was living in this little apartment and we didn't have very many lights. And I would take my little light and I would plug it into the room that I was in, and I'd have a little orb of light. And I remember thinking that this was kind of how my life was. Like, I couldn't see farther than this little, you know, each night I would plan for the next day. I haven't remembered that for a long time. And I remember that even my ditto sheets didn't feel like a real teacher's ditto sheets. I didn't even know how to make dittos that looked, you know, professional. So, yeah.
There's this wonderful thing you've brought together already, though, that is, there's the lost teacher. My daughter was here making plans Sunday night for Monday in her classroom, right? She's in her 3rd year of teaching, all during the pandemic. And there's the sense of, I don't know what to do. I'm doing the best I can day by day. But you brought it together with your passion and your hunger for learning. You were reading right away. You know, a writer teaches writing. You were finding books that would inspire you. What is this thing called teaching? And I feel like that was the answer for me. I don't know how many people found their way into the work by reading professionally, but it was the game changer. And it was your work that I was reading, yours and Dawn's, and how important it was to have vision from somebody who was a little bit ahead of me.
Yeah.
It kind of raises issues too, you know, about how much help, right? Like, how much help, you know, we've all had student teachers, and there's that tension between, you know, same thing with a kid when you're sitting next to a writer, like, how much of a nudge is right. There's always that tension in my teaching career. Like, am I doing too much? Am I not doing enough to kind of nudge this person forward?
Yeah, well, like you, I'm interested in helping new teachers, and I'm pretty concerned about next year. They say there'll be a third of the teaching population is going to be new. So my colleagues and I have been trying to think, what's the big, huge, major thing we can do to help new teachers? And I don't know what it is. Yeah, I don't know what it is, but I think one of the things I would say to people is make sure you're not teaching alone. Mm-hmm. You've got to have colleagues, and you've got to, think with your colleagues, plan with your colleagues. And I guess that's another thing I would say is that planning is much more important than people realize. On the spot, you can only do so much. You can only be so thoughtful because you're gonna react. It's so many things happening at once and so forth. So I think really stepping back and making plans matters, and doing that with your colleagues.
No, I love that. And I love the vision that, there's only so much you can do on the fly, only so much emotional energy and brain power you have to take on. Like I always had in my head, I still do, a really big vision for where I'm trying to go. And that makes it easier. Like I've planned in my head, this is exactly where we're going to be in a semester. And if you don't have that, I think it's very hard, as you said, to even course correct. Something goes awry. What are you going to do instead? You have an idea if you have that plan.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, because, units of study, could you just give us a big idea? Like I remember talking to you once where you told me it was in a country, serving tens of thousands of kids. How big is units of study? Like, it feels like it's everywhere. What would you say?
Yeah, I don't really know. I think that the Teachers College Reading and Writing Project's curriculum in general is in something like a third of the American elementary schools. That does not mean they're all, following units of study as a curriculum. I think, it's different parts of it.
Yeah.
But I'm just to say about that, I'm very proud. One of the things that I'm proudest of is that for 30 or 40 years, we've been one of the most, if not the most influential curriculum in New York City. Mm-hmm. And I think, first of all, big cities are usually defined by churn, where you do something for 2 years and then it's thrown out. Then you do something for 2 years, it's thrown out. And also, it's not that frequent that somebody is really working in their hometown for decades. So what that means is that we've made a big effort to be real partners with the schools and to listen and to adjust, and their problems are our problems. And so in any case, I think that partnership, I'm proud of my kids and I'm proud of that partnership, maybe more than anything else.
Wow.
Can you talk a little bit about the origin of unit of study, what you were thinking at that time, why you went in that direction and felt?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I mean, most of the things most of the ideas that are important to me came from, the colleagues, my think tank of colleagues. Units of study was actually it was the brainchild of Carmen Farina, who was a phenomenal principal, then a phenomenal superintendent, then a phenomenal assistant chancellor, then a phenomenal chancellor. And Carmen used to tell me that I had to change my thinking about systems. She said, Lucy, you are such a renegade, such a rebel, that you're kind of anti-system. And you're always trying to help people to sort of break out of systems and be pioneers or be rebels like you. And she said, but I want you to think about systems as life-giving. The circulatory system, the solar system. And she got me thinking about how beautiful it would be if the project could suggest to the New York City schools, and then now it's to all of our partner schools, a kind of sequence of units that would allow people to plan together and allow the Teachers College Reading and Writing Project as an organization to be able to help people at the point of when they're about to embark on a unit. So it really was partly that if we know that people begin the year with narrative writing, and then we know they're going to shift to information writing, what that means is that across the grades, there can be cross-grade work, that literacy coaches can come together, 30 coaches from different schools, and think, how do I get ready to help my teachers? They're shifting to information writing. Principals can come together and can be reminded that as kids move to information writing, there's this or that new challenge or a new need. So it allows for work to be done at scale, which ultimately, the way to reach all the kids that we want to reach is to not just rely on the one brilliant, brave pioneer, but to allow to support things being done at scale. So there's loss in any, Mari Clay once said to me, there's always costs and benefits, and you want to be able to look at anything and think, what are the costs and what are the benefits? The costs and benefits of units of study are less if people really listen, because if they really listen, they know that I'm talking all the time about teachers developing their own units and about people adapting the sequence. And the cost is when people are, when units become a, mandated, straitjacket that people have to stay inside of. But the benefits, I think, are just gigantic. I see in a lot of schools, I see curriculum that looks a little bit like a Saturday morning flea market, with everything just sort of thrown together. And I think that if we really want kids to reach the high levels that the world needs them to reach, to be able to engage in critical reading and to consider perspective and whose voices are missing and all of that. If we really want that kind of rigor, then teachers need to be able to count on something having been taught the year before. They need to be able to say, can I take what you learned last year and I'm going to take it another notch higher? So I think there's a lot of reasons why units of study. I think it supports teams of teachers working together. I think it supports professional development happening inside of systems where it's not the one expert one time, but it's a large district. And we have districts, in districts in Texas, in Maryland, there's 50 schools in the district. And to really help 50 schools to do good work, it's very valuable if those literacy coaches can come together and say, okay, now we're moving into research-based argument writing, and debate. Who knows something about this? Let's get prepared so that we can be a resource for teachers. So anyhow, that's some of what the thinking was.
I think that's so great. One of my questions was going to be, what do systems get wrong in using units of study? And you really answered that when they make it a straitjacket, when they allow no variation, when they come up with these strict timelines and every single day of the school year is already spoken for, where, you were in the work of Graves, and I know about following students and figuring out, wait, I could build on this and do this, which is exactly what you said. Listening to you hear it differently than some districts present your work.
Yeah. I have to say though, sometimes you almost wish they would follow it more closely. Sometimes they look at a unit, and people will look at a unit and they think of it as like, this is a smorgasbord, and I'll take, and it's a little like looking at a house saying, I'll take the third floor bathroom, but they don't take the plumbing, Yeah. So it's a tricky balance, because on the other side, there's a developmental trajectory, there's a coherence, there's a that I think is, and I also think, by the way, the timeframes matter. Like I think kids can't be studying one thing for 4 months. I just think they, unless you've got a remarkable teacher, I think they grind to a halt. So sometimes teachers think, oh, I'll make it my own, and they just add, teachers pay teachers dittos, and all kinds of scaffolds that if the unit was designed for a month, they end up having the kids spend 3 months doing that unit, and that means they watered down the amount of work that's being expected to by 2/3. So yes, you want people to adapt and innovate and author their own curriculum and all of that, but you also want them to sort of understand that there's decisions behind this, and to take a little time to honor those decisions before just,
I would say the biggest challenge in our district here in the Valley was that teachers weren't really reading the units.
Yeah.
Right. The pick and choose part came because, we would often say, did you read the background, the beginning about how this builds on what came before? And I understand, we all do, how pressed teachers are for time. But I watched a teacher who, back in San Francisco at NCTE, when you rolled out the very first ones, I got a sample copy of the narrative Small Moments unit and brought it back with a first year teacher, or a first grade teacher I took with me to the conference. She couldn't believe the difference in what kids understood and what she was learning herself. She read it so carefully that the next year she didn't have to read that carefully, right? Yeah. She knew the land. Yeah. And I feel like what we've missed is that it happens with other PD books where you can find on a Teachers Pay Teachers or other site some truncated version that's missing all of the thinking that is actually behind those ideas.
So we've just revised the units. I've taken 3 years to do it, and I've tried to make them shorter. So
wow.
Sorry about this. So we'll see. It's not all that easy, but we've tried to make them better in a lot of ways. And one part of it's shorter, because I do think we have to respect teachers' time. And if I give them too much to read, then they're not going to read it. And hopefully, if I can be more careful.
Yeah. So tell me, how come there are no high school units to study?
I think that we've been waiting for you to do that.
Okay, we'll get right on that.
We were a K-5 project, and we added middle school. And one reason we added middle school is that it gave such lift to our 4th and 5th grade, to just be aiming past them. And now we're doing quite a lot of PD in high school. And that PD is everybody loves it. I mean, my colleagues love it. We love doing it. We find high school teachers are just such powerful readers and writers, and so ready to think with us. We also find that they don't know a whole lot about sort of some of the pedagogical moves that K-8 teachers know about, or K-5 anyhow teachers know about. And they're so thrilled to learn, something like Turn and Talk even,
Right.
So right now we're enjoying the way it goes, which is that when we work with high school teachers, we bring them the ideas and we invent with them, and it's a lot of fun. Everybody's enjoying it. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point we ended up doing some units for high school. Excuse me, my dog is.
It's your little puppy that we want to meet. Lucy, I don't know if it was maybe 10 years ago, I was on my way up to Winnipeg, and you sent me a document that at the time you were thinking about with high school people, which was the interdisciplinary projects that were possible. And you had science and, like all of these things where the English teacher could support some of the thinking that could cross all of these content areas. And I was so intrigued by it and excited to see the project taking that on. And I think that I'm encouraged that you're helping teachers learn some of the moves. I was an elementary teacher first. And so it was very interesting to me to move to a high school setting where content was king, not the pedagogy of the learners and the, what we learned as elementary people. So I think it's really interesting. What I was going to ask you was what's next for you in your work, because you're in the midst of revising these, which is the hardest revision, right? Shrinking your text and making it shorter.
Well, also just, I kind of think this is my last revision, and to make the books as perfect as I possibly can. It's not been easy. Well, let's go to the question of content. That is everybody's concern right now, and it's ours as well. We are not revising the reading units the upper grade reading units at this point. And the reason is that I can't figure out, it's a couple of reasons, but a big one is I can't figure out how to do content and grade specific units. Because as soon as you get a unit like the Revolutionary War for fourth grade, you find out that in California, it's taught in fifth grade, and American Revolution is not a really great big topic in Singapore. So it's just hard. And in this very divided country of ours, it's hard. And with standards changing and topics changing, it's just, I haven't found it easy to, I know there are places that develop units on the fly really quickly, like they're all on the computer. They're not ever printed, and they just whip them out. And I suppose if you develop units super quickly, you could like whip them out for the American Revolution fourth grade one year, and then the next year you could switch it to fifth grade, and then the next year you could switch it to this, and the next year. But the way we write, we do some 30 drafts or something. It takes a long time. So I don't know what content to build units around. And I don't think that I think as soon as it's generic, it doesn't really work. It's about content specific. So we are writing a unit now on science writing, which is going to have the water cycle kind of as a dominant part of it. But anyhow, it's hard for us to choose topics and to feel confident that they won't switch to a different grade level.
Yeah, makes sense.
It's interesting to hear you say, though, that you're still in revision after all these years and all this expertise that you have, that the best teachers are always in revision, taking what they did last year, tweaking it a little bit for next year. And I'm just wondering, when you said that, I just wondered, I'm wondering if there's an idea that kind of earlier in your career, you've kind of revised and kind of changed in a different direction.
Well, there are a million different big ideas that we're changing all the time. I'll just give you a few of them that are important to us now. Well, certainly we're centering Black and brown children in a way that we didn't before. I really think the question, for whom are you writing, is got to be there. And it's pretty easy, if you're not really deliberate about it, to just kind of write for little you. So I think that's been one, that's very important to us. I'm very interested in some new understandings of the writing process. They're not that new, and that if I say them to you, you would say, "Oh, I always knew these things." But you discover things anew, something you knew, but now you realize you didn't really know it. And so one of them is the importance of rehearsal, and just how important it is that kids are particularly orally rehearsing and revising at the rehearsal level. So that they're telling a story this way, then that way, then this way, then that way. So, but even just if a kid goes to pick up a pen and write, the day my dog ran away, that they take a moment to say, okay, I'm going to write the day my dog ran away, and I'm going to try to show my emotions, or I'm going to try to make the setting be an important part of the story, just that they have some intention. So it's not just what am I writing about, but how am I trying to make it good? And just, the little thing, like when you go to take a picture on your cell phone, you don't just, if you want to make it a good picture, you take a moment to, oh wait, move back over here, move over here, to think about how to take, not just what you're taking your picture of, but how to take it. And that should be part of rehearsal. So that's an example of something. I also think, of course, revision is always my biggest thing, but conferring, I think just understanding that there are lessons to teach writers at every part of a writing conference. So if you think of a writing conference as research, decide, teach, or research, decide, complement, teach, I think that sometimes teachers think that the research part is just the teachers doing the learning. But to really ask a writer, what are you trying to do here? How's it going? What ideas do you have for what you might do next? That's maybe the most important instruction that you give in the whole writing conference, because you're basically teaching a writer to shift from writer to reader, and to really do that, to do the writing process. Mm. So there's ideas like that. There's a lot of ideas. Of course, in reading, we have struggled with the whole science of reading and have done some major revisions because of that. So yeah, there's lots. We're revising a lot. My organization has a structure where every May we gather the 450 principals who are closest to us, and we lay out the revisions in our thinking for the next year. And so, right now, that's what we're working on. So for example, one of the things we're working on is adding more scope to our reading units, because a lot of teachers have readers who had a chaotic, interrupted experience during the pandemic. And, they're teaching fantasy book clubs in 5th grade, but we've got a lot of kids reading The Magic Tree House in 5th grade. So how do we make sure that the units have the scope that they need to support readers in this ever wider range right now? So there's revisions like that we're making.
I always thought that was one of the most powerful things that you do at the project, is the way you gather all the leaders together to reflect on what's happened and what changes we might want to make for the next year. And you have another day when you do some of that rolling out of what the planning will look like in the fall, right? What the year will look like.
Yeah, we then start the year with some conferences where we bring out the new things. But yes, every May everybody is expecting the revisions, our recommended revisions of the curriculum, and it's it's 150, 200-page document. It's not 5 pages, because it's for every grade and every reading and writing, and just little things like the language that's being used on high stakes tests now is not elaborate, it's develop, So just saying to teachers, switch around some of these words, make sure they understand that when you're going to elaborate on an idea or you're going to develop an idea, those are the same things. We need to comb that in so that, and when I say our suggestions for revision, it's not our suggestions. We just do the listening tour to try to figure out what's gone wrong and what could be better. Let's say, just take the personal essay unit. One of my examples, I said, you can think about a person in your life that matters to you, and think about a big idea you have about that person. So one of my examples was, I could write an essay about a person, my brother. The big idea I have about that is my brother's a brat. And that's the essay. And I'm looking back at that horrified, first of all, because it's not very nice, but more to the point. It's not that helpful to, get kids to persevere on and on, but more to the point, that's not a personal essay. There's nothing personal in it. And so I'm saying people, if you're going to do big ideas about a person, it's about your relationship with that person. It's about you and that person. It's not about that person,
Yeah.
I've been jealous of my brother all my life. That would be a personal essay. Whereas my brother's a brat, if you're really, and if you're teaching essay in a way that is a little cookie cutter-ish, a little boxes and bullets-ish, which I think there's a place for that when kids are 8. I know that's open for negotiation, but I kind of believe in that. I think it's really important that it is personal, so that there's something that resists the cookie cutter thing. So in any case, yes, I think the expectation for revision is a big part of my life.
Yeah. I'm so struck by you calling it a listening tour. it's almost like you come full circle all the way back to where we started with Lessons from a Child, because that entire book is built on your study and your listening. And the famous phrase of yours, say more about that I kept hearing on those tapes I watched, where you just intuitively knew that that student had more to teach you. So you had to get her to say more. And I think that that's the piece that teachers are hungry for, is that people will listen to them and say, tell me more about this problem you're having or this thing you're imagining. And you've been such an incredible model of that always.
It's funny. It's not my personality to be such a great listener.
Well, I was hoping you would end.
There's things you take on that you do it partly because it makes you better, and I think, yes, I think the fact that listening is a big part of, what I value as a teacher, I think it's because I need to almost have that placard, over my life, I need the string around my finger, remember to listen.
That's so funny. Well, one time when I came to visit you at Teachers College, you were so excited to show me some of the books that you were collecting for your libraries project. And I just would love to end with, how did you come to choose the books for the libraries that teachers can get a list for different grade levels? Because I remember just your joy and your excitement over that. So tell us about those libraries.
Well, that was the project where we just thought, what's needed? What's the big thing that's needed? I think right now the big thing is to help new teachers. This particular year, I thought we really need to help people get not just more books, but better books. So we wrote to about 800 people. I think it was 800 people that were the sort of book people that we know of in the world. I'm sure we wrote to you, Penny, and we wrote to Shalise, and we wrote to, Anita Sylvie at the Horn Book, and we wrote to all kinds of people, David Booth, and we asked everybody, send us your all-time favorite books, the books that you think will turn kids into just ravenous readers, they'll love them. We wanted to really go for books the kids would love. And we got 30,000 titles. And then we went to the publishers and we asked if they would give us the 2 copies of the 30,000 books. Now, that was a mistake. If you can just imagine how many boxes arrived. We happened that year to be able to take over the sub-basement at Teachers College, where the walls are rocks and there's little, creatures scurrying around. We took over this of the whole college, basically. It wasn't like a room. It was, the whole. And we had 30,000 books there. We set up, and it was a little, not really where you wanted to spend your time, particularly. We were in the caves, but we set up the books on tables and brought in hundreds of teachers who helped us. And we, for example, made a mountain of mystery for 3rd grade. And we did this for everything, but this mountain of mystery for 3rd grade. And so it was, level LMNOP, mystery, whatever it was. Then we had to somewhat level them, just somewhat. So we could begin to and we figured out about how many for 3rd grade, if the library is going to be 500 books for 3rd grade, how many should be mysteries? By the way, almost every book that a 3rd grader reads is a mystery. If you really think.
I didn't know that.
If you really think about it, a lot of the fiction really is mysteries. But in any case, so I think we came up with 60 books should be mysteries. So then we had to choose the best books. And it was very hard, if there was a series, do you put the whole series? Do you put the first 3 of the series? Do you have duplicates of the first one, and then 1 and 1? But we ended up hiring the really most amazing people who came and were sort of worked with us full time. And somebody in the project, it would be a team of people who would own each of those kind of little collections. So Alyssa and Brooke, who wrote the mystery unit, owned that collection, and everybody else would help with it. So that's how we did it. And what was remarkable about it is that usually libraries are centered by a publisher publishes these books. And so the libraries are only by that publisher.
Yeah.
You know, and frankly, they're the books that the publisher has in their basement that they kind of want to get rid of to some extent, you know. Whereas we had nothing influencing us other than trying to do right by kids. So that was that project. We do need to totally staff a redo of it now. So we've been doing, you know, we've kept it, we've tried to update it, but we need to do more than update now. So that'll be another project.
I'm getting to volunteer for that, because I can see me sitting, I don't care where it is, reading all these great books.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lucy, what a pleasure to have you with us today, for your generosity of your time and your expertise. There's just nothing that can match reading one of your books thoroughly, I have to say. You know, I've just learned so much from you.
Well, thank you both.
Immeasurable, really. And again, it was a real thrill to be able to sit down and have this talk with you.
Thank you. Appreciate the time.
All right. So great.
Okay. Bye-bye.
We'll see everybody again tomorrow.